Hi everyone, this is a video showing some possible solutions to the third string task set at mrmoosey.com. Okay, here we have some code. A string array called names is being constructed as a new string array with 5 elements. And in computer memory, this is kind of what it might look like. Here we have our identifier names, which points to a string array with 5 elements. And ideally, each of these elements will point to a string object. However, after we type this line of code, we have not yet constructed any string objects. We have merely created a 5-element string array. And Java will point the string object pointers, the individual elements, to something called null. And you'll see this if you then type this code and run your program. You should see null 5 times. Names 0 points to null, names 1 points to null, names 2 points to null, etc. Then, after we construct the string array, why don't we assign some string objects to some of the elements in the array? So if I type names 2 equals JSON, this will replace null with a string object. And the data in that object is JSON. Another way of doing that is, for example, names 3 equals new string Alan. So names 3 will now point to a string object. The data within that object will be Alan. We can also assign the string object pointers to be assigned to other string object pointers. So I've just said that names 2 is equal to JSON. There's a string object. So names 0 is now going to point to the same string object that names 2 points to. Names 4 is going to point to a new string object which will be names 2 plus names 3. This plus sign concatenates these two strings. We know that names 2 is JSON, and we know that names 3 is Alan. So names 4 is going to be JSON Alan. So if you run this code and see what you can see, hopefully you'll understand those ideas. So let's move on to the more meaty tasks. Create a 7-element string array quickly, like this. So this is another way of populating a string array. And here we have 7 string objects. And there we have it. Notice, by the way, you could also do this. String array names, let's just call it names 2 to remove the error, equals new string Jack, comma. Okay, so you can also use this way of quickly populating an array. I'm just going to delete all that, and hopefully you get what I'm talking about. Alright, write some code that displays Jack rules if... Write some code that displays the number of Jacks and the number of Jills. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to set up a couple of integers. Int numJacks equals 0, and numJills, which is also an int, equals 0. Now I'm going to use a for loop to loop through the names array. I equals 0 to I is less than names dot length I plus plus. So we're just going to loop through each element until the end of the names array. And if the element that started, let's loop with I. If names I, which is a string object, remember, dot equals Jack, we're going to increment numjacks. And if we copy and paste that code, we can do the same for Jill. So remember, names I is a pointer to a string object. Now it could be null, or we may have assigned a string object to that pointer. So this will start with I equals 0. So if names 0 equals Jack, numjacks plus plus. And then we increment the loop, I becomes 1. If names 1 equals Jack, etc., etc., etc. So outside the loop, end of loop, just put a comment there. Let's do system.out.print numjacks plus a space plus numjills. And let's see what result we get. So there are 5 Jacks and there are 2 Jills. And if we look at the array, that is exactly the situation. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Write some code that displays Jack rules if Jack is the first element of the array, if Jack is the first element of the array and the number of Jacks are greater than the number of Jills. Write some code that displays Jack rules if the Jack is the first element of the array. Okay. Well, we've already got the number of Jacks and the number of Jills, so let's keep this code. Let's just comment that out for a minute. If numjacks is greater than numjills and the first element of the array is equal to Jack. Well, the first element of the array is named 0, and we're going to test if it is equal to Jack. If that's true, we will have a system.out.print Jack rules. And for some reason I've got an error. No semicolon. Okay. If numjacks is greater than numjills and the first element of the array equals Jack, this is be the result. We'll run that. Jack rules, because the number of Jacks is greater than the number of Jills. Write some code that counts the number of times that Jack is immediately followed by Jill in the array. In the array above, this happens twice. Write some code that counts the number of times that Jack is immediately followed by Jill. Well, Jack is immediately followed by Jill once. Jack is immediately followed by Jill twice. Jack is not immediately followed by Jill. Jack is not immediately followed by Jill. And Jack is not immediately followed by anything, because that's the end of the array. So that's a dangerous little situation there that we'll have to think about in our code. Alright, so I'm just going to delete, let's just delete that. And I'll keep my for loop, because I'm sure I'm going to need a for loop. We'll delete that. Alright, I'm going to make a new integer called count, which will count the number of times that Jack is immediately followed by Jill. Let's go into our loop. If names I dot equals Jack and names I plus 1 dot equals Jill, so this is the next element, count plus plus. Now the problem here is that in our loop we start at 0, which is this element, and we finish at the last element. And we've got this plus 1, I plus 1. So this is going to take us outside the array, and we're going to get an error. In fact, let's run the code and just see what we get. Ooh, out of bounds. This is an array error, and it's because the loop has reached here. This is element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6. If names 6 equals Jack and names 7, oh dear, there is no name 7. So to fix this, I need to stop the loop one place early in the array. I'm going to stop here. And let's run that again and just see if we still get an error. No error. Okay, let's do system.out.print count. And hopefully we'll see a result of 2. And there you have it. And let's just stick another Jill at the end. So this Jack is now followed immediately by a Jill. Hopefully we will see a result of 3. 3. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Write a program that will find any name in the array that has a second letter A and will change it to an @ mark, and the program will display all of the names in the array at the end of the program. Write a program that will find any name in the array that has a second letter A. Well, that has a second letter A. That has a oh yeah, Jack has a second letter A and Jill doesn't. And we're replacing that with an @ mark. Alright, I don't need to count anything, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to keep my for loop, because that's very useful. I don't need that anymore. Alright, so let's go through the loop. We're starting with I equals 0, so let's just think about this little thing here. If names I dot substring, we're looking at the second letter, so that's 1, 2. Dot equals A. If that happens, if the second letter of the string object is equal to A, we're going to rebuild that string. Names I will be equal to, well, I want to keep the first letter, that's not going to change, so names I dot substring 0, 1, that's the J, plus an @ mark, plus everything after the second letter. So this is index 0, this is index 1, so everything after index 2. So plus names I dot substring 2. Not square brackets, isn't it? It's a method. Substring 2. And I'm just now going to create another loop after this, just to display the result. So we'll copy that, paste that, system.out.println names I. And let's run that. Jack, Jill, Jack, Jill, Jack, Jack. Alright, those are my solutions to those 4 problems. There is another problem at the bottom, but I'm going to run out of time. See if you can figure out the final problem. The solution is very, very easy.